This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Okay, I'm calling to order the meeting of the Ad Hoc Grant Search Committee for March 22nd at around 2:35. And we have members of our committee all present. Diana, Kate, and Ed is there. Just had to take a phone call while it looks. Ian is here, and I got a note from John Workman. I think he's probably either going to be late or not be able to make it. He had another conflicting commitment at the time here. And I don't see Randall or Tom. I don't know. Hey, Ed, would you know if Randall might be joining us at all, or if not, we'll just plow on here. Whoop.
I'll see if I can find out.
Okay, thanks. Well, at this point, we'll just move ahead. I put the minute meeting approvals at the end of the meeting so that we wouldn't take up time doing that this afternoon. I wish it was morning. We don't have anybody hanging out there for open time for the public. So what I'd like to do is just jump right into this whole notion of the MVP grant. Lo and behold, I sent you all some information around after our last meeting. We had, if you recall, we had attended a webinar and had some initial information about it, but really hadn't seen what it all entailed. And then literally about 2 or 3 days ago, the request for proposals came out. So I have been trying to sift through it. It's not not the easiest thing. Let me pull up a couple things to show you here. I can find the right one. So I think this is the right one. It's one of these that, you go onto Combees and find all the umpteen million forms and things that you have to fill out. But let me see if I can get the right thing going here. So this is to follow up on our MVP planning grant. So this is the actual action grant. Come on. Announcement that came out. It's due on May 5th at 2 o'clock. It's done online as usual. And so a couple things. I don't know that we knew if we did know this. It didn't stick in my mind, which I guess it should have last time. But the grant funding for a project under the action grant has gone from $2 million to $3 million for individual projects. So that just tells you the scope of what many communities are dealing with, which may be over and above what we're thinking. I don't know offhand. There's umpteen million pieces of paper in here. I'm gonna see if I can just go down. I'll be glad to forward this to you if you'd like to look at it later on, but a lot of it is just all this instruction stuff. It's obviously open to those communities that have completed their planning process, which we have. We therefore are eligible to apply. The core principles, I think for the grant team, we had talked about some of those last time, which was trying to look at priority actions that the community had identified for addressing climate change impact, using climate change data for our solutions, using nature-based solutions, looking if it was possible for climate vulnerable or environmental justice communities, impact, a lot of community engagement, multiple benefits, if it was regional in particular, et cetera, et cetera. So lots of things like that. This can be either a 1 or a 2 year project, depending on the scope of the project itself. When we would get into any kind of a budget thing, where we would be asked to put out all the activities very clearly in year 1 and year 2, because the money does not roll over from one fiscal year to the next. So you have to be very precise in terms of the way I'm understanding it, the amount of activities you would actually complete and the money you would commit in year 1 if you were to make this a 2 year project. So depending on the scope of the project, it would either end by June of 23 or June of 24. So here it says applicants are asked to divide project tasks between them so that you can get everything basically done. This is a 25% match grant as well, which I will find here maybe. Here we go. So 25% of the total project cost is a match. We are not listed on attachment N as an economically disadvantaged rural community, which would give us only a 10% match. We are a 25%er by the looks of what I could see of the names of the communities on there. It can be in kind or cash. And it can be provided by the applicant or direct partners, including other federal or foundation grants to complete that. At this point in time, we don't have any such money that we could use to that in terms of any other grant money on hand. If we did an in-kind match, that's fine, but then all the local match has got to be determined by, you know, who would be the people involved in completing the tasks and the value of those tasks. So this all local match must be directly related to the proposed project and tasks, will be and need documentation to substantiate it. Costs incurred prior to this, of course, will not be considered. The match spending details have to be provided for every reimbursement point, the money that we would request, and cash contributions are those to purchase goods and services associated with it. So challenge here, I guess, because I don't know that we would have, I mean, we don't even know yet what our project would be. Hopefully we could narrow down a couple of ideas today in terms of what our priorities might be, but figuring out a costing for that and then having to turn around and go to, for example, CPC to try and get a match, a 25% match. I mean, our timing is really tricky here because obviously anything with CPC has got to go before town meeting. Our town meeting is early May, and we've got to have things on the warrant certainly no later than the middle of April at the very, 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 very latest. And that's assuming we could get it before community preservation ahead of time. So I guess I'm stuck in terms of how we could even think about a match on this with the time frame that we have. Does anybody have any clues that I'm not thinking?
When do we have to have the documentation of the match
It's got to be
completed by?
it's part of your application, as far as I know. It's part of the budget.
So you would have to provide documentation of the match before the grant is awarded?
Yep. Definitely before it's awarded. And that's been true on the other ones we've done for the Greenway too. We've said this is what we're gonna, you know, what we're working on. I mean, we're, you know, I don't know that I haven't seen on the budget where it says if it allows you to say in process. We did that one on one of the Greenway ones, I think.
Right.
But not totally clear. So that's just a big question mark for me in terms of time frame to go. I mean, you know, at most we could alert CPC, but I don't think we'd have enough information to present to them to give them a clue about what we'd want to do. But
so
anyway.
it says it commits to match. So we could commit, could we bring it to CPC after the fact?
Well, I don't know.
Because why would you bring it to CPC if you aren't awarded the grant? And that's just me trying to understand.
I think mostly, Diana, haven't we done like for Mass Trails? We've gone to CPC first, have we not, as part of the process?
Yes, I mean, it's all dependent upon the grant, even the vote at town meeting. We've, you know, they've voted CPC money depending on getting the grant.
Whether we get the grant. So I guess, I mean, I guess you could, I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, honestly, I've looked at this so many times, it's blinding. I'd have to look back in the budget, I guess, to see what that timing is like. But anyway, let's not belabor that. I mean, just to say, go ahead.
The hard part is if you don't have the match before you do the grant application and then you get it, then you have to wait for a town meeting.
Right.
For a vote.
Yeah.
That's the challenge.
Yeah, so that's the other part of it too. So there's 3 eligible project types that I'm understanding. So this sort of planning and assessment capacity building is one, and these go back to some of the core principles. And I think one of those, we'll jump over to the plan, our MVP plan for a second, just to see that. But I think anything that we would be talking about, I would guess would fall more in this planning and capacity building section, from what I saw in the MVP plan itself. Just jump down to the second and third categories just so you see them here. This is actually pretty lengthy. So believe me, there's more language here to read about what you can and cannot do than is worth it. Design and permitting. So this would be more for site preparation, installation kinds of things. And that's why I'm saying I think we might be more logical in the planning and capacity building, and then construction and on the ground implementation. So I'm not sure that we would fall into those categories offhand. I'm going to just see if I can find the actual application itself, which Lord knows. They bury it very nicely in about a 65-page document. Okay, so they're due, let's see, any questions? Oh, here's the other thing. Any questions that we have, we're encouraged to put in writing to our regional coordinator, who's a guy named Andrew Smith. He's the coordinator for the Central Valley. So they've divided up DEP into various districts, and he would be our coordinator. So if we have any written questions, we need to get them in by the 31st, and that's the only time that we're allowed to ask questions, the way I understand this. These RFRs are a little bit tougher in terms of their requirements here. Let's see, the estimated award, if we got it in there, the estimated award would be already decided by August. So they don't take too long to turn it around with a May application and turn around by August. So it's a pretty quick turnaround compared to some others that we've heard about. Let me just find the stupid thing here. Hold on. It's coming, believe me or not. Believe me. Okay, this is kind of the beginning of the application right here. So the typical, who are we, town, what region, all that's typical, no big deal. Point of contact, and then so the proposed funding, funding. So this has got to match whatever our budget is in our budget worksheet. Figure out whether it's for a 1-year, 2-year project. And then, so here's where the match comes in here. And then a match description. So maybe, let's see what this says a little further here. Provide a description of how the municipality match will be met and source of funding. So any other state funding resources can't be accepted. Other state funding. So there's a question, Ed, does CPC count as other state funding sources? That's a good question. Further details on match requirements. Do I really want to skip to this?
I wouldn't think so.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
would be my first reaction.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a little bit of it right in that cover of the application, and then project summary, continuation of a previous MVP funded project. Well, it would be part of the planning process. Address, coordinates for the project, if that's applicable, and then basically your full narrative here. So then it tells you how you get rated on your narrative. So the description and rationale and climate information is probably one of the bigger sections of this. Talking about climate change and impacts that are going to be addressed. You know, what are the vulnerabilities that we've identified that this is going to address? How it's going to impact positively the resiliency of the site and the community. So this is the bulk of the narrative right in this section here in number 1. Let's see. I thought we had read last time that this climate resilience design standards tool was optional. And I guess I need to double check that again, because I didn't think we had to worry about it, frankly. But let's see. Yeah. So yeah, so that's another question mark. I thought for we had the choice not to have to use that, but maybe that was only for the planning, a planning grant and not an action grant. So if it's an action grant, then we've got to figure out how to use this resilience design tool and figure out where we fit with that.
Maybe it is optional and you just wouldn't get the points for it if it's not submitted.
Yeah, see, because here we come down into here up to 3.
Oh, it says right here, you're not
Right
required to, if it's not focused on a specific site and does not include a physical asset, you are not required to submit a report and will receive this point.
Yeah, but yeah, okay, well, nothing is, I don't know, maybe my understanding of grant lingo this week has not been very focused, but I find myself going in circles with some of this language. Anyway, so, you know, the project yearly progress report, I mean, that's something that happens after you get the grant. So I don't see how you get a point for it at your point now, except if we did a progress report on the planning grant, not the planning grant, but the planning report that we have. So maybe that's what it's talking about, is based on our MVP plan report. You know, if we gave a yearly update about what we've done against some of those priorities, then maybe we'd get a point for that. So
what was the date of our thing? To June 2021. So we might not need to do that.
Well, who knows? I mean, so that's
all. It says community resilience, the summary of findings was published in June 2021.
Right, I know, yeah, but so then the budget is another big one, timeline and scope. So a big 15 points here for the budget. So anyway, this is kind of how they go about looking at this thing. And so the application itself is still, and then nature-based solutions, environmental benefits, that's a huge chunk of scoring. Could be 10%, 10 points rather, for planning and capacity building grants. As if we're project type 1, for example. So, I mean, just to say, it's not not the most straightforward thing to look at here. I definitely do think we ought to, you know, seriously consider it. I just don't know where we tackle it. And then the typical environmental justice and public benefits, 14 points there. That's always our challenge. Community engagement, et cetera, et cetera. So in terms of the real application itself, it's somewhere buried in this craziness. I have not yet been able to pull out just a clear piece of the application. It looks like all this, you know, the application is really online. I take that back. So the application is online, but this gives you an idea of the kinds of things that you'd have to fill out and have ready to cut and paste on the inline, on the online version, in the online version. So anyway, this is a bit of a lift, to say the least.
Big lift.
Yeah. Let me just see what else is in here. Anything useful? So these would be kind of some of the matches here. Some of the application requirements, rather, the attachments. So if we were doing any permitting, then we'd have to have something related to that. We might have to have letters of support. There wouldn't be, sorry, this would only be town meeting vote would only be if we were buying any land, et cetera. So it's, you know, I won't go through all this because there's another 40 pages of this wonderful thing. Just to pull up if I can find it, of course, that's always a good question. Oh, good. This was something more readable, and this is actually our the excerpt page out of our plan, and this is what came up. Remember, I think I told you all that we had the Excel spreadsheet.
Mhm.
I think the grant committee folks looked at last meeting, but this was within the document itself. This kind of put up the high priority ones, which was this field inventory of culverts and bridges, and then on down. And I think in here too, Ian, the notion of the communication and the repeater on Mount Tom was included. Dispatch repeater, yeah. So that's one of the ones in here too. You know, all sorts of things. A lot of this stuff I wouldn't think would be appropriate for any kind of grant per se. So I think we would really want to focus on the top 3 or 4 things offhand.
I thought that conducting the field inventory of culverts and bridges, and then maybe loop in a dam assessment. Because they're all kind of, I mean, the first 3 I feel like could be looped into a bigger project that would directly correlate with the objectives of this grant project. Like a road and bridges and culvert assessment.
Yeah, and I think some of these, and I don't know, and again without Randall here, but I mean the dam assessments and dam feasibility removal, I mean that's happening down at the Lyman Mill Pond Dam. That's Sheldon's. That's happening already. That dam is, that's underway. That whole process. I can't think of why, and the White Reservoir Dam is empty, so why that's a priority. Honestly, the dam on Ian, maybe the dam Middle Road in White Loaf. I can't even envision
it's a very small dam that just creates a little pond.
Okay.
So when you're going down White Loaf Road, down the hill, and you have to stop at the intersection of Middle,
Okay.
across the road is that little pond.
Oh, okay.
That's a dam.
Okay. All right. I was just trying to figure out where is this thing? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So that does kind of, it might tie in a little bit with this, Kate. Yeah, I could see that. And
it's like stormwater management as a top. I think the topic could be flooding resiliency and stormwater management or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think, with the new stormwater bylaw that we approved at the last town meeting, I'm not sure what else has to be done with that. Because, Randall worked on that for many, many months with PVPC and crew to get that stormwater bylaw up to date and in place. So I don't know what more has to happen with something like that. But just going back to the notion of the field inventory of culverts and bridges around town, I have no idea how many there exist around town, but I'm sure that many of them are either very old or undersized. And, there's definitely some like down on Gilbert Road, I would think, or that area that might be, well, that's maybe more the bridge on Gilbert Road, but things that may need to be really looked at that cause a lot of potential flooding. I know the Gun Road, Riverdale Road area, a couple of those places are particularly challenging in terms of flooding, but whether that's all related to culverts and bridges, I'm not totally sure.
And
So
you do know that the Conservation Commission got some money from the Eversource settlement. And part of that, I think they're putting toward culverts in the Zipter Farm area.
Oh, really? Okay, good. I didn't know that. Well, I had heard that the grant was coming in, yeah, or the award for that, but yeah. Okay, so that's good. So, I mean, in terms of projects that we could think about, I mean, now that we've done the whole effort to put the MVP plan together, it just seems like these categories end up being our most logical ones to focus on. The next one were this thing about isolated outages with the dispatch, with power outages, and then the dispatch repeater. The public safety complex is being looked at elsewhere. I wouldn't put that in under an MVP grant myself, because I don't think they're funding any infrastructure. This would be really on the planning side of things. So again, I would just repeat that I think we would fit in the planning / capacity category of the 3 grant types. And if, Kate, as you say, we can somehow weave at least 1 and 4 together, and then it may be, combination of, well, 1, 2, and 4 kind of all fit together. And I don't know, again, whether we've already taken care of that stormwater management part. We may have already. I'm not positive on that. But where and how we go about it, I think, Ed, we've got this on-call engineering situation out on the street right now, which isn't due back until, is it April 10th? Is that right? That applications are due in?
I think it's the 4th or the 5th.
Oh, okay. All right. Maybe I'm wrong. So, I mean, it seems like we couldn't even begin to proceed with this without having a clue of somebody to give us, I don't know, some level of inventory cost estimate. And I guess I just don't know whether Randall must have somewhere, I assume, his list of problem culverts, or maybe even a list of all the culverts in town, or is that the water department? Is that the highway department? Who would have that stuff? And where do we need to begin on this if we're going to do it? Because, we've really got like 40 days to pull this together if we're going to do it.
I would think it would fall under highway and probably is being developed under that MS4 plan.
Okay. So what's our thinking? Is this something we want to try and tackle? I mean, it seems a shame to not follow up with the planning effort that was done and to go for an action grant. I don't know that we've got a $2 million project to put forward, but we certainly would have a few $100,000 project dollar, maybe, I would think, or a few $100,000s if that's possible. I don't know.
Chris, I don't know if would this at all intertwine with the ARPA funds as far as sewers? As far as the match?
Oh, that's federal funding. I brought that up at the last meeting to see if this could be used for the sewer project, or, additional steps towards the sewer project, just because it is so environmentally focused.
Yeah. Well, we had talked about using some of the ARPA money already to look at the sewer situation in Hampton Pond. So that's there. But what you're talking about, Ian, is to use the ARPA money as a match for this grant.
Well, as far as looking into the Hampton Ponds, I mean, can we kind of use this as well and use them together? As in, like, is there already a plan for Hampton Ponds? Or
Well,
could this be the funding for the plan and the match can be with the ARPA funds versus it all being paid on an ARPA?
Yeah. I think, Ed, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe what we voted on at select board was to have them update the previous plan for the Hampton Pond sewer system. And that's being funded out of ARPA. So the update of the plan that had been developed by the SEA consultant group, I don't know, 15 years ago, is being updated. And then that will result in some level of a design to move forward with, putting something into action, I guess.
Correct.
The one thing John mentioned in his note to me was just whether we could look at Norris, I guess, declaring that as an emergency center and then allowing us to look at, I guess, probably applying for something for air conditioning, but backup power at least. So that was one of John's thoughts. He said he'd get back to me with more information, but
I don't know that you can use and it might be worth reading into it a little bit more. I thought I read somewhere that you can't use this type of funding for generators.
really,
That was my memory too.
yeah, okay, it could very well be.
It could have also been the FEMA funding
Yeah.
that I'm thinking of, but I wanted to say there was no diesel generators for.
Probably not for this one. I would think that would be true. We might have had it as a possibility in the hazard mitigation plan update. That's where you see some of this is kind of butting up against each other.
Blends
The hazard
together.
mitigation MVP, throw in ARPA, yeah, that's all together. Okay, so again, Ian, just so I'm clear, go ahead and state that again, please. I just want to be sure I'm hearing you correctly.
Well,
what
if there's, and I don't know how far along any type of design or is when it comes to the ponds area. But if we could get a grant to support what our intentions are already, and then match the funds with ARPA, then you're not using it entirely ARPA funds to conduct the studies and the design. I guess that's what I'm trying to go with here. But again, I'm not, I could be speaking out of school here because I don't know how far you are along with anything with the ponds area and the sewer system out there.
Yeah. Well, Ed, you've had the discussions. All I know is that we were presented with one of the consultants that was in on the original assessment. That company, I guess, no longer exists perhaps, but the consultant does, and he's now, I think, with Ty and Bond. And so they presented a request to update the study itself to see if any of the plans that were done many years ago are still even viable, or how much has changed. And I think that was like a $12,000 chunk that we agreed to fund out of ARPA. And I don't recall, it wasn't going to take them very long. I think it was going to be maybe a month or so to get that updated and then come back to us with any kind of a plan. If that's right, Ed, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was like $12,000 or $13,000.
Mm-hmm.
So could we apply, instead of using it for the planning stages, use it for, or apply for more of an implementation?
Well, we don't know what it's going to look like. That's the problem. And part of it will be,
Right.
Everything is kind of out of order in terms of our sequencing of what we need to have happen. And definitely the ARPA money is been touted anyway as something that is, things like water and sewer are things that can be funded via the ARPA funds very definitively. Whereas things like feasibility studies are probably a little bit trickier to do. I don't know. So that's why I didn't know if this notion here of looking at something like these culverts, for example, taking our top priority and just saying this is what we want to focus on. Oh, come on. Or combining a couple of them would be the easiest thing to do, because we don't know that we've got money to do this otherwise. But I just don't know what this is going to turn into. So I guess, Ian, the updated plan is not going to be that big a deal perhaps, but what it's going to show is, it sounds like Westfield may have enough capacity to allow some of the households. I believe there's 100 households in Hampden Ponds that would be affected. So how many of them could possibly tie into the Westfield system? What had to be done, in terms of our own, installation of sewer capacity, et cetera. That would be where the real action plan is, and the amount of money. And I guess I don't know how soon we're really going to know that.
Right. Okay. I thought I was just throwing it out there. I wasn't quite sure how far along you were.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something that's being revived. I mean, the definite need and request has been revived and brought for us to look at. But I guess what I was thinking, Ed, is whenever we get this request for proposals, so the RFQ that's out on the street asking for a variety of engineering services, I guess I'm assuming that with that coming in, we would hopefully have some entity that might be able to help us actually do this kind of work, because we would want to get somebody to give us a quote in terms of what this would even take to do the field inventory and culverts in order to make a budget, right? I mean,
Correct, unless we've already got it.
well, and who would have it? It would only be Randall that would have something.
Correct.
Yeah. All right.
I think Concom has something about culverts. I don't know, not town-wide, but
Yeah.
some info.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I guess I'm not totally sure where we want to go with this.
I'm just looking at the last year's awards, and there's a ton of projects that were specifically related to flood resiliency, climate resiliency, really like conservation areas, current and future stormwater flooding risk assessments.
Yep.
So well, I would love to move forward the Hampton Ponds project because it is a public health issue as well. But, you know, if you're thinking that we don't have enough information in order to be able to do that, I think that's a great idea. If there's a way we could just take that budget and move that to the next step of like actual implementation, I think that would be a great first option. I think it hits, you know, several priorities, and it also helps us to be more resilient as a community. I mean, it's such a big problem. So I definitely would support that as an idea, but I also, you know, don't know what it would take to actually pull that together as an application and to do the budget and everything with the information we have.
Yeah, I think the challenge, like, for example, going on the Hampton Ponds one, that is already in a study phase, all right? So what would come out of that would be the real implementation, which is going to require a whole different level of requirements for this grant, for permitting and, you know, all that kind of stuff. Whereas if we could stay within the planning capacity building side of the things, it might be an easier set of requirements we have to pull together. That would be my thought. That's why I was leaning toward the Culvert Bridge assessment notion, but I just don't know what we have in hand, and without Randall to help us, I feel like I'm stuck. So I don't know where to go with this. Ed, do you have any clue about whether we have a culvert plan or any such thing?
I'm sure we have some with that MS4, but I don't know how extensive it is already.
Mm-hmm.
I had asked Randall to get a list of his troublesome culverts together.
Yeah. Okay.
There are projects that are in this list that do a full culvert assessment and address number like 3 top priority culverts. So I'm just, you know, look, this one, 4 communities will embark on regional community-wide culvert assessments of approximately 400 culverts and design the replacement of 3 priority culverts.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and see, that's where I'm thinking, you know, like if we don't have any kind of culvert assessment in place, which we don't know, I don't know if we do, we might, but I think at one point I had heard Randall talk about the need to do some sort of a broader townwide assessment study of some of our more problematic areas, but just in general. I mean, which ones are just, you know, not sufficient enough to carry the increased water capacity that we have, or, you know, to minimize flooding, etc. We could maybe find that through the response to this RFQ that's out on the street right now. If there's an engineering firm that comes in that says, hey, we've got extensive experience in stormwater management or whatever, I mean, we could actually ask that company to give us a statement of work and a quote for how they would carry out a townwide study of culvert vulnerability, for example. But again, that comes in early April, you know, take a week, 10 days easily to get those ranked and scored. We're talking mid-April, and then to pull a grant application together by May, whatever.
What if we made it a smaller, what if we made like a higher level budget that's really just a culvert assessment with, you know, I don't know how many culverts we have, but, you know, maybe there's a formula for doing a culvert assessment or something that we just don't know about that we could get from like Ty and Bond or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, in order to meet some of these criteria for climate resiliency, you know, it feels like it's that topic that's going to get us into a competitive field rather than some of the, you know, the other ones on the list. I mean, the idea at Norris, whether or not that could even qualify, generator won't, but, you know, would the air conditioning, or would some sort of solar at Norris, or, I mean, I have no clue, guys, in terms of what would help us with that to to make that one competitive. And I don't know about
You could do
the,
a cooling, you could do a cooling center. And I mean, that would definitely address climate resiliency.
well, yeah, and we've got it to a certain extent with the church, I think. I mean, we've got an agreement with them anyway, when they've already got their new generator. So, I mean, you know, we just got to figure out where our niche is on this. I mean, where could we actually do something meaningful that would really take us farther down the steps in terms of having some level of climate resiliency, I guess. You know, what's our most urgent set of issues, and our vulnerabilities seem to have been, at the time when they pulled this report together a year ago, was that flooding was one of the biggest concerns. So
the other thing that I'll do, I mean, I'm just looking at the report of specific categories of concerns and challenges. Just because we did identify a bunch of concern areas in town, and something that Randall said that was an ongoing problem was highway department is reinforcing roads more often to accommodate the deluge of rain and prevent undermining of these roads because they're prone to flooding. Riverdale Road was mentioned as a road of concern. Of these two roads, the impact is mostly restricted to road closures until flooding subsides.
Yep.
So I think it's worth either doing a more detailed assessment about where our highest vulnerabilities are, or taking one of those projects and
Yep.
you know, focusing on that, you know, something that we've already identified as being an area of vulnerability through our planning process.
yeah, I mean, I think it's got to be one of our top level ones from our planning process. I mean, I don't think they would want us to take something on the low end of what we identified in the planning process. We should be addressing the highest priority that we feasibly can do.
Mhm.
And the question is, I just, you know, right now we're kind of in the dark without, you know, the benefit of Randall here and giving us some information. So I guess I'm going to suggest at this point we not belabor this, and between Ed and I reach back out to Randall and see what we can get. And if we have something more concrete to work from, you know, I will schedule another meeting soonest to see if we can work on something. I don't know. Is there anything else? I mean, I don't know, Ian, with the repeater situation of the antenna. I know you had talked about that at one point in time, but I think when we first started the grant committee, if I'm not mistaken, out on the picnic tables at the COA, I think you brought that one up, and you were saying that you were finding some other ways around that problem, right? By having other uses of other antenna up on the mountain. Was that correct? Or
No, what we have to do is, it happens a lot, especially with when there's ice buildup. So it typically twice, 3 times a year we'll lose our repeater, and it all depends on how bad the storm is, because they need to take all-terrain vehicles up to the repeater. They can't just drive up there. If you were to look at the mountain and you see that cluster of antennas on the large cluster of antennas, that's where the repeater probably should be. That's owned by Hoyok Gas and Electric.
okay,
And that's all based on, they have their own, it's accessible because there's a road there, an actual paved road, as well as a generator system. PVTA actually allows us to hook into their generator, but it's not a guarantee.
mm-hmm.
So to have it move there, the only thing is there's a monthly fee to that.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it would be beneficial to have it move there, and if a grant could support the cost of moving it. But right now, I don't pay any fees for the current repeater location, any type of lease or anything like that.
Right. And so generally most of the year it's fine, except for the 2 or 3 or 4 times during the winter when it's so icy you can't get up there and it fails on you, right?
That's right. That's right. And the only other thing is highway, police, and fire are all on different antennas.
Yeah.
So, and highway the fire department has a different repeater. Where if we were all in the same location, yes, it would be beneficial, but
Mm-hmm.
we've certainly managed. You know, my only concern is, can I afford $1,200 a year to pay for the lease of that location? Because I think that's roughly what it's going to be.
Yeah. And what you would be talking about right now anyway would be moving it, not necessarily buying a new repeat, not necessarily buying a new antenna, right?
No, it would be, well, you'd have to buy the antenna is up there. They just put it on another antenna. So they use their coaxial cable and set it up on an antenna that already exists.
I see, yeah. So, I mean, given the givens, I mean, how high a priority is that for you? Is this something we should try to aim for, if not through this grant, through something else? We will still want to keep that on the list of a priority to try and solve?
Well, why don't I do this, Chris? I can reach out to our radio service and see if they can give me an idea of what that would entail and the costs, as well as Hoyle Gas and Electric, to make sure that they still have room for this location.
Yep.
And I imagine I could probably get that information relatively soon.
Okay, all right, good. Well, that would be helpful.
Maybe there's some other funding for
Yeah.
that, or like a FEMA grant, or so. I know we were trying to figure out something for a FEMA grant recently. Maybe that would be.
No, it may be. I mean, I think, you know, it wasn't one of the top ones here on the MVP, but it's still an issue out there. So,
Sure.
I
One of
think-
the things too, Chris, if there's not something that, and we really want to try to take advantage of this, the bridge on Gilbert is always the first overflow over the streets.
right.
And it's, that might be something that, could be easily assessed by an outside agency to see if there's anything we can do with that, because that commonly that's the first street to get flooded.
Yep.
And then it's Riverdale, as you know.
Right, yeah. No, I think.
This actually says that it's noted as a current concern and challenge. It says 2 areas in particular were
Right.
called out as locations of repeated flooding and road closures.
Yep.
So
No,
it's already
definitely.
in there.
Yep, definitely familiar with both of them. So I
Yeah.
think that was, that is that kind of the third priority, tying into the culvert one. I mean, if there's a way to talk about that, and I guess we just need to have a better conversation with Randall to understand
Sure,
what
absolutely.
we know,
Yeah.
what we know and what we don't know, and what would we try to find out if we did do some level of a planning study. So I think that's probably all that we can do on that for today. So thanks, Ian, for coming on that. And if you get some information, just shoot it back at me, and
Absolutely. No,
we may try to schedule something again for next week if we have any information. If we don't have any information, I don't want to waste people's time, but
Sure.
Ed and I can try and corral Randall and see what we know about culverts and bridges and see where we
You got it. You got it. And I'll reach out to our radio service tomorrow, and they're
Great.
usually prompt.
That's great.
Okay.
Thanks, Ian.
Okay.
Appreciate
Thank
it
you.
much.
Take care.
Thank you. All right,
Thank
thanks. Okay, guys, I guess I will ask if we could move on to just approving the minutes from the other times. If you don't mind, we had a couple that we had missed one actually in January, just by, I don't know, oversight, busyness, and no problem. So Kate.
I switched laptops and I think I lost the minutes for this.
Oh,
meeting.
that could be it
Sorry
too.
about that.
So this was from the January 20th timeframe. We had actually approved I think it was the 25th last meeting. So we'd missed one in between here. So this is somewhat very familiar. I corrected a few typos, Kate, but other than that, basically this was still talking about the hazard mitigation plan update and all that we were working on that. And that's again where the top concerns came in. Same whole thing here about culverts and bridges and so forth near critical infrastructure, the emergency generator and shelter at Norris. So all of those came up as possibilities in our hazard mitigation plan update process. We won't know about that one for a while to know where we can go with that, but that's not so much an action grant, whereas this is to take something and put it into priority action now. We talked at the time who would be on the committee for the HMP update, and about how we would, how the budget had to be presented. So it's basically, I mean, everything looked like it was fine here in terms of what we discussed as I saw it. And then we jumped in on the mass trails and just finalizing how we would look at that and what our total budget was and so forth. So that was we were still a couple weeks away from actually submitting the mass trails grant. But we talked about some of the attachments we needed to include and went over the budget and the timeline, those kinds of things. So I don't know that I saw anything that was too out of whack here. Like I say, I made a couple of typos changes, but other than that, if anybody would like to approve or make a motion to approve the minutes for January 20th, that would be great. If you
I
need more
think I
time to
need
read them.
a motion. I'll make a motion. And then I sent the ones for 3/9 too, right?
Yep, you did. I got those next. Yep.
And I'll second that motion.
All right. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Gibson, aye.
Okay, Fowles, aye. All right, we'll do that one, and then I'll pick up the last one, which was from the 9th, I believe. Let me find the right one. Okay. And this is the one that we had just a little bit ago. Guess it was the 9th, right? It was a couple weeks ago. I was thinking it was longer than that, but I guess not. This was the first time that we got together after we had submitted the Mass Trails grant. We approved those sets of minutes at the time, and we were just starting to talk about things. Ed was giving us an update on sidewalk construction, and Ed, I gather something may be happening on that soon from what you were telling me earlier today.
Well, Gilliher wants to start tomorrow, but I'm trying to get Stan Tech to contact the district engineer, which is one of the requirements for them to start. So haven't been getting an answer from Stan Tech.
Okay.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Yes, it
is. Yeah. And so basically Ed gave us an update in terms of what was happening with that, the rail trail and the park design. And we do have the RFQ out on the street for things. And like Ed said, hopefully that will cover a variety of engineering services that we will need over time, some that we don't even maybe know about yet, but tried to make kind of a long list of possible disciplines for people to respond to. And hopefully we will have a good level of interest on companies putting in their qualifications so we can move forward on those and due back, I believe Ed said early April. And he had proposed at the time that probably he, Tom Gahn, our water super, and Randall as our highway super be involved in evaluating the RFQs that came in.
And then there's been one other volunteer to help rate those too.
Yeah. So we'll figure that out as we get them, but we don't, probably not much has come in at you yet, right, Ed? I mean, I think a lot of these things people tend to submit at the last minute, don't they?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully though, we will have various firms. And I know Kate, you had reached out to somebody at DOR and I gave that name to Ed, but I mean, if the guy gets back to you with any design firms that he's aware of, be sure we get those.
For the splash pad.
Right. So just to be sure.
I did. I haven't heard back yet. Let me take a look at my email.
So just that, if he has any firms that he know that, they've used or he's seen being used that seem to put forth good work. I know he gave you the statement of work for Springfield or something. So yeah, so we can be sure that they actually see the RFQ and have time to turn around and respond to it within 10 days, 2 weeks, basically. We started talking about the MVP last time, and these were the 9 principles. So we just saw those again. We don't need to go over them. We had a vague idea of some of the project requirements, but at the time the call for applications wasn't out on the street. We looked briefly at that. If you remember the Excel matrix chart that listed the high, low, and medium priorities that came out of the MVP plan itself in chart form, and saw some of those same ones that we were just talking about: bridge and culvert, dam modification, etc. And so then we decided we had to wait until we could have a meeting once the applications came out on the street, which they did, I believe, on the, I don't know, around the 14th or 15th, sometime around there. They came out. So that's what we were just talking about now. So if everybody's okay with that, could I have a motion to approve the minutes of the March 9th meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Bye.
Aye, all right. Okay, thanks for that. So those are approved. I guess, what would be your recommendation for how we can get some of Randall's time and attention? Should we ask him for a time that he can be available and see how many of us could join in that way? I don't know if this timing has just not been convenient for him with his other priorities. So
Yeah, that would be the best bet.
okay, maybe he could give us a couple of windows that would work for him. And I assume afternoons work better for him than evenings, I'm guessing, but.
Yeah, I would probably say mornings or afternoons.
Okay. Now, how does that go, Kate, morning wise with you, Kate and Diana? Anything challenge?
I can send you my availability if that would be just helpful. I just wrote it out for someone else.
Okay, that'd be fine. Yeah.
Every day is different for me, and
Okay.
I don't think I'm critical anyway.
Well, hey, I think we are all kind of trying to see how we can be helpful here. I just feel like, you know, after all the effort that went into getting the MVP planning grant done, I would hate to miss the opportunity to put in an action grant application. I just don't know where we hang our hat the best, and it feels like it's that culvert bridge assessment to me, and Lord knows I need to read that crazy document 15 times more to understand what we are really required to put in for the application.
Yeah.
But if we can try and catch up with Randall Ed and see if we can, you know, even if we have to meet again next week, we can try to figure out a way to make that happen. But just see what he has for us that could be, you know, a document to start from at least, or if he's worked with another design company before, maybe he's got somebody in mind to do this kind of a feasibility thing.
Okay.
Whatever we can figure out. Okay.
All right, sounds good.
This
All
is
right, so
kind of a, this
Yep.
is kind of a
Yep.
off the left field, but
Yep.
would a charging station, would that come under any of that?
Electric charging stations.
Yeah.
There's like federal grants for that right now that are just separate for like
Yeah.
100% covered. You can just
Correct.
get them. You can just, I was reading about it, that you can just get them paid for right now, or fully reimbursed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I just thought that might be a,
Yep.
you know, high profile thing, get some
Yeah.
some good press for us or something.
Well, it might be worth, I mean, if you have a link, Kate, feel free to shoot that around to us, because it may be worth, I mean, who knows? I mean, you know, I mean, again, some of the, it wasn't the highest priority, but the whole issue of, you know, doing something in the realm of solar energy in town was something on the ARPA results. I think it was more to tie in municipal buildings, frankly, rather than, you know, electric charging stations. But hey,
Yeah.
nothing to say that we can't be a few years ahead of the game. We're usually
Yeah.
trying to catch up.
Well, it's just it wouldn't be that big of a deal, hopefully. And,
Yeah.
you know,
So I
something
mean,
like-
if we had a clue of what's out there, it might be worth just going for it, whatever.
I'll take a look. I think you have to pay for the electricity, so.
Right.
So if you put, say you put something at town, and this is why I didn't really pursue it, because I was like, we're not gonna wanna pay for that. But if you put like a charging station at town hall, then town hall's responsible for.
Mhm.
The electricity for it,
Yeah,
correct.
so, okay.
Yeah. And so nobody that would come and charge their car would have to pay for it? Is that what happens? Or,
Correct.
And right now, we don't have any, you know, hybrid cars in our fleet, so.
I know that there's extra reimbursement for like, okay, because I know I looked this up because we were looking into new trucks for town. So I was trying to find a way to get a grant for a truck in town, and there's almost no funding for any gas powered vehicles at this point. But if you were to put in electric charging stations and move towards purchasing electric vehicles, then there's kickbacks from the state and federal government to move your fleet to more green solutions.
right. Yep. Okay. All right. Well, I think at this point in time, we don't have an idea of a meeting, although I might just to hold a date. I'll take a look at what you've sent around, Kate, and if we can touch base with Randall too, and just see what our possible dates might be. And I may just put out a date just to have a holding time in case we need to get back together toward the end of next week sometime. I know I've got a cost efficiencies meeting on the 30th, so that's going to be kind of a busy day for me. And
Did you hear anything back from Parks about, not Parks, Greenway about the raise?
about the
Is it raise the federal highway funding?
Yeah, no, I talked to Mark a little bit about it. I had gone through a lot of it, and I think Mark would kind of like to see if he could do something with it, but I don't know that we belong to grants.gov, and Ed was going to check into that to see if we are even a member of that or however we have to do to access
Then,
that.
like, do you just need a membership? Because I think I'm on grants.gov.
Yeah, we did not. I entered it today, but I can tell you that just even doing the username and passwords was a pain in the butt. So if they want to do a grant application, they're going to have to coordinate their grant application writing with me, because it's a double security code that comes back to my cell phone, and the code's only good for 10 minutes.
And that's to get in to register or to actually put in the grant?
That was for both.
Oh, well, because what
Yeah.
I was hoping to do was to be able to just print out the application somehow to show them what was involved.
Yeah,
Were you able to see that at all or not?
I did not get that far because I got a little ticked off at it.
Okay. All right. So
That's due
basically though,
April 14th, so that's also like,
yeah, I mean, that one I think that one's even worse in terms of a deadline, honestly, Kate. And, you know, I think you had probably mentioned it at one of these January meetings, you'd seen it come up somewhere along the way. And I must say, you know, I tend to not put a lot of focus on federal grants just because I know the weight of these is just so heavy compared to a state type grant. So we didn't jump on it quick, and neither did Greenway. You know, we might have had a little bit better of a chance if we had jumped on it in February, but I think this one is going to be really, really tight to do. But I mean, if you have access to, you know, a grants.gov personally and want to share that with them, go for it.
I don't know if it's like from the town, like.
No, it's probably from your own organization.
Yeah, I would
But
think
I can go back on and see if I can find a raise application. And
Okay, if we could at least just find the application, then we could just maybe forward it to them and let
Yeah.
them see what it is. That would be good. Okay,
Okay.
so let's have a motion to adjourn, and note that I will try to see availability and possibly schedule something for next week. Okay,
So moved.
all right. Could I have a
Second.
second? All right, all those in favor of adjourning?
Gibson, aye.
Aye. Fowles aye. All right, 3:36. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Take care,
I
everybody.
feel like
Thank you.
we're treading water a little bit here, but I'm hoping we can find our way up somewhere and get a breath of oxygen to move forward. I don't know.
That's all we can do is try, right?
Yeah.
I guess. Thanks, guys.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.